Welcome to Three the Hard Way Sports Podcast from three guys who talked sports together over lunch for over 10 years, probably eating a Fudgy the Whale.
Welcome to Three the Hard Way Sports Podcast. I'm Bryan Galloway here, a little under the weather, but still here, ready to record. It's almost at this recording. We're probably going to be at New Year's Day, and so we're gonna reflect today on the year 2024. And first off, we have from Parts Unknown after his lunch he had with Coco Beware. We have Michael Pipersek. How are you?
I'm doing great, Bryan. Good to be with my brothers from other mothers, and happy holidays to everyone.
Great. And from Rumson, New Jersey, we have Alex Shanley. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing great. Really looking forward on looking back this year to see some of the great things that happened.
Well, you know what's interesting, and before we get started, and we'll go through this, but it wasn't a dramatic year as far as sports that normally would be. So I'm curious to see what we're going to talk about, because normally there's a lot of things that really are obvious, and there weren't as many this year, but there are some good ones, and let's see what happens. So who wants to go first?
Yeah, I would say it was like a year of big stories, right?
Big stories. That's a good one.
Versus, like dramatic, like you said, Brad, dramatic events. But like Caitlin Clark, for instance, big story, and her going to the WNBA and all that. But yeah, it'll be fun to discuss. So, Mike, do you want to go first, or you want me to go first, or Bryan?
Yeah, I'll kick off, and I'll be Captain Obvious with this one. And I'm sure you guys know where I'm going with this, but for me, like a big one was the Celtics winning their 18th NBA championship. So,
right.
First one, it was a big one. That's a big one. It is big because they had a couple chances and they didn't do it. Now that they kind of justified a lot of things that people did with that organization. So.
Yeah, last one was 2008, and at the time I wasn't too into the NBA. I had a 2-year-old, and I was not crazy about the trend that the Celtics had really kind of started with that 2018, which was trading for Kevin Garnett, trading for Ray Allen, and to me that seemed like a little bit like a cheap way to win a title, rather than building with youth, developing those players over the years, and then making some really shrewd trades, not for stars, but for those role players that just help you get over the top. And look, that really led to me, the Heat doing what they did with their big three and other teams, and superstars kind of joining forces and stuff. I mean, the guys that the Celtics traded also to get some of these guys were not great players. Like to get Ray Allen, they traded one of Bryan's top 10 all-time favorite players, Delonte West. They traded Wally Zerbiak, Jeff Green, Glenn Davis, okay guys. And then for KG, it was Al Jefferson, Ryan Gomes, Sebastian Telfair, one of those failed playground legends, Gerald Green, Theo Ratliff, Cash, 2 first-round picks. It took a massive load to get KG. And look, it worked out perfectly, right? The first year together, those guys won a title. 2010, they lose a 7-game heartbreaker to the Lakers. But this team, the 2024 team, I love the way they put that team together. I love that they hung in there with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. There's a lot of talk about breaking those guys up after all these failures. They brought back Al Horford, who seemed to be done after kind of going adrift in Philadelphia and Oklahoma City. But then Brad Stevens made these great deals to get Derek White, made a great deal to get Drew Holiday, which to me was
a steal.
Really the difference.
Yeah,
that was a steal. Yeah.
That to me was the one that won the title. And then, of course, Kristaps Porzingis, which was like, well, this guy gets hurt. Played really well up until he got hurt in the playoffs. And look, they had a bit of an easy road. They got the Pacers in the conference finals instead of, the Knicks. They got they beat kind of a depleted Heat team as the 8 seed, even though the Heat took game 1. They beat the Mavs, who are a 5 seed. But I loved watching Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown kind of like reach their full potential by winning a title. Beating the Heat, I think, exercised some demons after losing to the Heat in the bubble in the conference finals. They lost again to the Heat in the 2023 playoffs as well. Jason Tatum had not played well at all in those finals against the Warriors in 2022. So for me, this was kind of like redemption for those guys, and kind of a little bit different than what they did in 2008, where they built a super team. Here they said, hey, we're going to build with these two young stars. We're going to stick with them. We're going to find the right pieces to put around them. They tried Kyrie Irving. It didn't work. They tried some other pieces. So to me, this was a title that was well deserved, and to me more in line with what I would hope to see with a team, where they kind of, you see these players go from 18, 19-year-old kids that are learning the game to becoming those seasoned veterans that can come through in the playoffs. And yeah, I just thought this was a great championship for the Celtics. I really felt like this one was quote unquote earned for them. So this was my top one, of course.
Yeah, it's a great one. And now it's their time to be dominant, right? Like, stay atop the conference for a few years, win it, maybe fall back after a couple years, but still be the best team in the playoffs. So it's really just the beginning, I think, for the Celtics and their run. So we'll see if they can stay up there.
And they've raised the bar for other teams, right? Like, look at what the Knicks
Yeah.
did. And to me, that's exciting, right? The Knicks, to me, like Knicks Celtics, if the
Oh, yeah.
Knicks are that number 2 challenger, Sixers obviously have some injuries with their big three, or whatever you guys want to call those guys who keep seemingly getting hurt. But Knicks Celtics, and maybe it's a regional thing, but that to me, if those two teams can match up in the Eastern Conference Finals, would be incredible to see.
Yeah.
Like the Garden and then the TD Garden, like rocking for a 7-game series.
Yeah. Agreed. That's a good one.
That's a good one. It's good for it's good for the NBA when the Celtics are good. And sorry, like there are people that obviously don't like the Celtics, and that's fine. But the thing about it is, it's good for basketball when some of these certain teams, like the Knicks and the Celtics, are good. It's just good for the whole league to have those like flagship franchises play well. So it's a good thing. Even whether you like them or not, you want to root against them. That's great. That's part of being in sports, right? But as long as they're good, it helps a lot in the sport. So because I know people don't care about Oklahoma City. I'm sorry, they care about the Celtics. So it just good. That's a good one, Mike. Very good one. Who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
So mine's a little bit of an out there one, but for you WWE fans, I'm going to pick Cody Rhodes winning the title finally in April at WrestleMania. So if you're not a big WWE fan, or if you are, that the circumstances around this were interesting. So Cody Rhodes he's the son of Dusty Rhodes. He had been he had left WWE to go to a startup AEW, spent a couple years there, and then dramatically came back to the WWE and was immediately on the path to win the title, and which his father never did. And he was up against Roman Reigns, who had the title for like 3.5 years, one of the best champions ever in WWE. And there was this big build up to WrestleMania, which was in April, that Cody was going to take on Roman Reigns to ultimately win the championship, or quote unquote try to win the championship against Roman Reigns. And there was all this build up, but the whole backstory was in January. So WWE was purchased or merged with UFC. So the TKO group kind of merged both those two together, and not that competitors would compete against each other, but just kind of creating one large company, like a $20 billion company that was in sports entertainment. And surprisingly, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was added to the board of the TKO group in January. And so Cody's got this run going, and he's going to take on Roman Reigns. And all of a sudden, The Rock's back, and The Rock wants to be involved in the wrestling match. And The Rock wants to actually take on Roman Reigns and beat Roman Reigns. So Dwayne Johnson comes in with this pitch that, hey, I'm going to take on Roman, because Roman's whole stick was he's the head of the table. He's, wants to be acknowledged in every match as being, like the Samoan tribal leader. And The Rock's like, well, wait a minute, that's me. So I'm going to take him on and make that happen. and the fans went crazy. Like, who's this guy to come back in here? We're following this whole story of Cody. And because he wanted basically Cody to step aside and him to take on Roman Reigns and him to win the title, and then Cody to eventually wrestle him for the title. And that's the way that they were going. And the fans went crazy, like online and everywhere. They were like, this is ridiculous. What's happening? This is Cody's opportunity. And actually, the fan reaction changed it back. So they switched back to, no, Rock, you're not going to be taking on Roman. You're going to be you're going to side with Roman against Cody Rhodes. And that's ultimately what happened. And there was WrestleMania is now 2 days. So on Saturday, Cody actually fought against The Rock and Roman and lost. And then Sunday, he fought against just Roman Reigns and he won the title. So
Didn't The Undertaker come back too? Wasn't The
not
Undertaker there that day? I thought The Undertaker was there, if I remember.
The
no,
king
I
of
don't not.
WrestleMania, right? The Undertaker.
Yeah, I don't remember that. Why don't I remember that? I don't
I
know.
could have sworn I remember that.
So,
He came
so
back. Okay.
Cody Rhodes had to wrestle twice
Yeah, so
Wow.
WrestleMania is now over 2 nights. It's actually a good
and
thing.
the
It's
same
Saturday.
guys. Wow, that's brutal.
Yeah. Well, it was a tag team match the first night to
Uh-huh.
determine the rules of what would be the second night.
Oh
So
man.
yeah, so it was an interesting setup. So it's actually better that they've split it because WrestleMania got so long; it would be like 4 or 5 hours of wrestling. It was like way too long. So they do. I think they do 3 hours Saturday and 3 hours Sunday, and they can have a lot more matches and a lot more guys in it, and so on and so forth. So
So this was a bloodline match.
yes,
And what did
yes.
that mean? Like that Roman Reigns could have guys like interfere on his behalf or something?
So Roman's guys were allowed to be involved. So the bloodline. So Roman Reigns had a faction. So
Okay.
Jimmy and Jay Uso were in the bloodline, right? And they were kind of the three main guys in the bloodline. Then there were some other guys that kind of came in and out. Sami Zayn and Solo Sikoa and other guys, but there were like these factions now. And then what it meant was that those guys weren't kind of banned from the ring and they could be there. And so Cody was kind of taking on all these guys. They weren't necessarily in the match, but
Mm-hmm.
they were allowed to quote unquote interfere. So anyway, it turns out Cody wins, and it's a big deal. And he's now the reigning champ. And Roman was a great champ. He's like 3.5 years he was a champion, one of the longest reigns ever.
Wow.
But what it did was it built all these factions now. So there's all these groups now within wrestling now, 4 and 5 guys and women together, and they kind of have individual matches, but they're in these factions. So that's what the bloodline ended up starting. So anyway, that was a big event this year. Kind of we've talked wrestling in the past, but one that I thought that I would bring up today.
Nice.
That's a good one. And so I was just looking here. John Cena was there, and it said the Undertaker too. I'm looking, but anyway, okay, we can go back and look at that deeper. So let's my thing. I'm gonna go to the obvious one because to me it was one of the big highlights of the year for me in sports because I didn't previously I could care less about this league and the teams there and the people there, but Caitlin Clark and her prominence and what she
Mm.
did, and the path she had to go through to get to where she was because the whole Angel Reese stuff was a bunch of baloney too. I really didn't like all these comparisons because there was no comparison. It wasn't even she shouldn't be compared because she's 1,000 times better than Angel Reese. But
But don't
y-
you think they did that on purpose?
Oh
yeah, hundred
yeah.
Like
percent they did.
like trying to create the Larry Bird
It's
Magic
a great
Johnson
100% they
rivalry?
did.
storyline,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Totally different players.
Her ability to draw crowds, draw TV audiences, and then come up big in those big games. Like, and again, her first couple of games she had a little tough, and she was getting used to the league. But after maybe the 10 games in, she became that superstar. You saw these again. She's only a rookie, but you saw her mature. You saw her get better. You saw her and her teammates get to, really work together. They became a really good team, and they were a last place team the year before, right? So I think that's a big prominence that one person can come in and really really change the dynamic of a team. And then all the drama she had to deal with on a daily basis, social media, the press. um, nobody had to deal with anything as bad as she had to do. It's like it was crazy. Her life was probably crazy, and I know she needed to take a break. But I am a big fan of Caitlin Clark. I never really cared much about the WNBA. I'd watch it sometimes, but I never really it wasn't must see TV. Her games to me were must see TV. I would make sure I would be available to watch them. It was so good to watch them, and that comeback story and her story, and especially if she was playing Angel Reese, you just love to have the villain there. Um, so I think this was great for sports. It's a very big dynamic. I just hope that the WNBA embraces it, because I really feel that as a league, they're not run very well, and they need to really focus on what's important. And for some reason, it was almost like they were working against Caitlin Clark last year a lot of times. They just didn't understand the impact that she had and what she was doing to their league and getting the exposure. They were actually fighting that, and I didn't understand that. So I hope that this year they do that. I hope she gets to relax a little bit and have a normal life. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm really curious to see what's going to happen this year. Because again, her games, they're going to be sold out every time they come into any arena. They're going to get sold out, and the league has to understand that that's great for them. But
Yeah,
they don't. For some reason, they don't seem to do that.
yeah, I never liked the players, like the veterans being like down on her.
Yeah.
do and I'm sure it was the same thing with Bird Magic. I mean, it was this definitely, I remember the Jordan thing, right? Like in the All-Star game and
Yes,
they wouldn't
yes,
pass on the
yep,
ball. And it's the same thing. It's almost like the vets being like, well, wait a minute, you're not better than us. And maybe she isn't, but she's gonna be,
yeah,
Yeah.
like, I mean, she's that good. And I think I didn't mind the whole Angel Reese thing. I think Angel Reese is great. She's a great player. B, she's great on social media, and she gets the attention, and she'll say what she wants to say. And that's not Caitlin Clark's game, right? Like Caitlin Clark's going to go out and just do it on the court. And I think so. I think it's good for the league that you have this person that's willing to say anything and do anything, and be on social media and all that, because kind of like Magic, right? Like that's what Magic's whole gig was. And then Larry Bird was like, "Hey, I'm just going to play on the court and really not say anything." So. But Brian, I think it's a great one. I think she was transformational not only for college basketball but for the WNBA, and really give credit to all those college fans, right, that went to every one of her games and packed the house and really made her the star that she is. So, very cool story for
yeah. I
2024.
like her. I like her. I'm glad she's getting some accolades. I think she's a good person. Again, you don't know. It's hard to tell, but from what I see and the way she interacts with fans and young kids, she seems like a good kid, and she seems like she's got a good head on her shoulders. So I hope that it stays that way. I want bigger and better things. I want her to win a championship. She's probably not going to win one this year, but in a couple of years she will. And they're going to build a team out there. They're going to get bigger and better. They need to get some size on that team. Um, but I think it's going to be good, and it's only going to be good for the sport. I mean, I'm sorry, and I think if the veterans do not embrace her this year, something's wrong. I could see last year they didn't embrace her that much, and they were okay. Understanding who is this person, but who is this person who's getting them all more money and getting them all better airline flights and all things like that. You know, Caitlin put a lot of money in a lot of people's pockets last year, so they got to understand that it's not people are not paying to go see Brianna Stewart as good as she is. They're not really going to see that, and but for me, Caitlin's emergence and the way she went about her business is a big highlight. So
I think Brian, you really picked the story of the year, because I think it was Alex. This is transformational for women's basketball. Absolutely. She broke Pete Maravich's all-time scoring record, which is unbelievable. Her games are must-see TV. I mean, I was tuning into Iowa games on Peacock to watch them. You know that someone's having an impact on a sport when someone that doesn't care about the sport knows who the athlete is, right?
yeah,
Everybody knew who Michael Jordan was. My wife would wander by when I was watching the Final Four, women's Final Four on Friday night, when Iowa played this great game against Paige Beckers and UConn that went down to the wire, and my wife is like, "Oh, that's Caitlin Clark's team, right?" She's had such a massive impact on the game. And I think that she's been very respectful of her place in the WNBA and acknowledges the players that came before her. So I almost wonder if, if these veteran players are almost playing a similar game that Angel Reese is, because to your point, Brian, she's putting money in everybody's pocket. She's elevating the entire game. She's helping to gain endorsements for these other players just through her presence. And now advertisers are looking to the WNBA for players that they want to sponsor and pull into ads and stuff. So I think this is a massive story, not even like beyond even sport, like how big it has been for evolving like women's athletics and getting sponsors to look across the athletic spectrum for like promotions to engage with female athletes. I think this is a great story.
Yeah,
Massive
she's a,
story.
she's a transformational athlete.
Yeah,
They don't come along that often, so we have to embrace her while she's here.
yeah.
I think it's pretty cool.
A
Okay, well,
great
thank you.
player, right? I mean, she doesn't just score. I mean, she was near the top of the league, if not at the top of the league in assists as well. She's like
And steals too.
yeah,
She does. No, she had a lot of turnovers, but that
yeah,
she's getting to understand the game.
yeah.
And
Agreed.
she'll get better at that.
I remember watching an Iowa game and being like, "Why are you passing it?" Like every time she'd pass it, they'd miss a layup.
Yeah, yes.
Like I was like, "What are you doing?" But you have to play the game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great player, though. Great
yeah.
player.
Okay. Well, Mike, you're up next.
All right. I promise I'm not going to have all three of my items be on hoops, but my second one is a basketball one. And as I reflected upon this one and did some more research on it, it only grew in stature in my mind for how great it was. And we talked about this when it happened and how great it was. And I really get juiced thinking about it. But for me, the U.S. hoops team winning the gold medal in the Olympics was an incredible event for me because the rest of the world, we've talked about this in the past, the rest of the world is catching up to the U.S. in basketball. And we brought another dream team to the Olympics. We had 4 MVPs on our roster. And then we had this next generation of players, Anthony Edwards, who said he was next and he was going to take over. Jason Tatum was on the team as well, Tyrese Halliburton. And then you had some additional kind of role players mixed in like Derek White and Drew Holiday. But it looked like we were going to cruise to the gold medal. We're hammering teams in tune-ups to the Olympics. We had that scare against South Sudan where everyone said, hey, what's going on? How did we almost lose to South Sudan? But once we got into group play, started settling in, we battered Serbia, who considered kind of a gold medal threat. And it looked like we were going to cruise to the gold medal. Then beat Brazil in the quarterfinal round and then got to the semifinals against Serbia. And to me, as I was watching highlights of it and watching interviews again in preparation for this, that was one of the best basketball games I've ever seen against Serbia because Serbia came out and really punched the U.S. in the mouth, led by 15 early, by 17 early. They headed into the fourth quarter. The U.S. was down 13, 15 points, and it took the 4 MVPs for the U.S. on the floor battling against Serbia's MVP, Nikola Jokic. It took everything that those 4 MVPs had in a lockdown effort from the U.S. and Steph Curry being Steph, hitting a 3 with 2 minutes left to give the U.S. their first lead since the first quarter, iced the game with 2 free throws at the end. Jokic was in foul trouble much of the game, or much of the fourth quarter especially, but like this to me was a phenomenal game. And then you had, similar to the Miracle on Ice, there was another game after that. And again, it was a great game against an up and coming French team. Wembanyama played a great game. Gershon Yabusele played a great tournament that got him back into the NBA. US was like pretty much in control. But again, for me, this game cemented, or this entire Olympic run, but particularly the semifinal and the final, cemented Steph Curry's legacy as the greatest shooter ever. 8 of 13 threes in the gold medal game. He hit what's called the golden dagger, hit 4 threes in the last 3 minutes of the game, put the game away. And so to me, the U.S. coming through and winning that gold medal was a fantastic story because you get to see those guys who make millions of dollars playing basketball and in endorsements. You kind of got to see what it meant to them to win a gold medal for their country. And they did it in dramatic fashion, beating Serbia in the semis and then France in the finals.
And they just wore Serbia out. It was almost
Totally
like,
did.
hey, we're just going to grind this until the fourth quarter, and then Jokic is going to be exhausted, and that's when we're going to win the game. And it was an interesting strategy and a nail biting one for sure, as you said. But yeah, a great choice, a great topic for 2024 for sure.
And
Yeah, it
have
was
to give a shout out to Brian's guy, Steph Curry, who was
no, and again, yeah, that
phenomenal, right? I
yeah.
mean,
So he was. I mean, to me, that was this was one of my on my list. This was it was again must see TV. Those games were must see TV. Like that, you made sure that you looked at your schedule to see what you could if you could watch them or not because those games are great. And obviously for me to see Steph come through is great. It's just it's so funny when you have these games you have to root for people that you don't normally root for. Like I was rooting for LeBron, I was rooting for Embiid, and I never root for those guys. Um,
Embiid shouldn't have been on the team.
yeah, Embiid should have been on
no,
the team.
Come on.
But it was great. It was just a great thing. It was amazing. That whole run was great. Um, so yeah, that's a great choice, Mike. I think that's one of the best things that was on my list. It was very high on my list, and I just I really can't get enough of that. I really I made sure I got the commemorative cards from the Olympics. I really cared about that because that was a big thing. We might not ever see something like that. We have that many MVPs in at one time, and we're seeing it. We're definitely seeing a shift in basketball. So eventually, we're going to get beat.
oh,
It's going to
absolutely.
happen sooner than later, and so that's this could be the last hurrah. But if it is the last hurrah, it was a pretty darn good one.
We'll see what those young guys learn from all these veterans. So all those guys that were kind of sitting and waiting, like a Jason Tatum, they've got 4 years to get ready, having learned from the four MVPs we had out there. Because for sure, this is LeBron's final Olympics.
Yeah.
I assume it's the last for the other three MVPs we had on the roster. But yeah, I just thought it was a great run. And normally I'm a little bit lukewarm on the Olympics, and particularly if I'm expecting the U.S. to just blow through the competition. But to me, this was a great competition and just really put basketball back on that global stage to see how far these other countries have come. I mean, there is just some great basketball and some great basketball players. They're not all in the NBA. Some of these teams, like the French team and the Serbian team, these other teams have guys that are not in the NBA, but they're great basketball players. And the international game is different, and you really see that. And it was just a pleasure to watch it.
And they
Absolutely
play together as a team more
fantastic.
than the U.S.
Yeah,
team does, so which
yeah,
which helps them a lot because they all kind of know
yeah,
how each other plays, and the U.S. team doesn't do that. So there is a little there's a as far as skill, the U.S. team might have better skill player by player, but they don't play together that much, so they don't even know their
yeah,
tendencies. And that was an interesting thing, watching Steph and LeBron play together. Like you always wonder, like I always wondered how those two guys would play together, which actually turned out to be pretty good. But
yeah,
it was that's the cool thing about this is most of these international teams do play as a team. They know each other. Like Serbia, they all knew each other. So that
Yeah,
was
well,
great.
yeah, in the U.S. and they're so ball dominant, right? Like all those guys that are on
yes,
are used to having the ball in their hands the whole time for the U.S. team. Whereas, to your point, Brian, the other teams that they're used to, no, we're going to pass the ball and this is how we're going to move it around. But the U.S. is like, no, Durant wants the ball in his hand, Steph wants the ball in his hand, LeBron wants the ball in his hand, Ant wants the ball in his hand, so Embiid wants the ball in his hand. So it's much tougher for them, but they did it.
found a way.
That was great. It was a great one. Great. That's one of the top things of the year. So okay, Alex, you're next.
So I would say mine is my next one is a baseball one, and it's Juan Soto, and it's not him signing the contract, which is obviously a big deal because he left the Yankees. We're all Yankee fans, but it was his at bat against the Cleveland Guardians in Game Five to advance the Yankees. So. Soto's up at bat, strike. The first pitch is a ball, and this is the playoffs, and everybody's watching, and they're in Cleveland. There's runners on first and second. It's top of the 10th inning, and um, the first pitch to Soto is a ball, and he's already doing his Soto shuffle, and he's moving around, and he knows this is a big moment, and this is what makes him such a great player, right? Like he recognizes the moment, and he is not afraid of anything. And congrats to the Mets because they're getting a great hitter, and he just battled in this moment. So after getting a ball from Gaddis, he got 7 straight strikes. So all off speed pitches. He wasn't going to see a fastball. Um, and I think Gaddis was brought into a tough situation, tie game, 2-2. Like I said before, top of the 10th. And Soto is just locked in. And he's fouling pitches off and fouling pitches off and fouling pitches off. And finally throws one, and Soto hits a home run. And the place, unfortunately for Cleveland, it was in Cleveland. The place goes basically dead quiet, and Soto is rounding the bases, and the Yankees get to move on to the World Series. Um, so it was a great moment, really, at bat, let's say. Um, the game was a great game. It was back and forth, a great pitching duel. But just Soto in that moment and knowing everything that was riding on that, which you know, he was going to get the contract no matter what. But I think that moment got him, you know, literally whatever he wanted. Basically, Steve Cohen for the Mets said, "What do you want?" He said, "Here's the money I want." Okay, you got it. Right. And the Yankees came back with an offer. And then, you know, he wanted his family flown to games. He wanted a suite. He could get whatever he wanted, and he did. And good for him. He's earned it. He went to free agency and risked it all. But I think that moment in the playoffs, that big at bat, just proved that he will be there all the time, and he will be successful a lot of the time. And it was just a great moment, not only for the Yankees and baseball, but for specifically the player, and a great player. And it was good to see him come through and really do what every kid would want to do, in extra innings, hit a home run to not win the game because the Yankees still had to go in and pitch through the bottom of the 10th, but in essence win the game because they went up 3 runs at that point. So a
Yeah, he
great
made the
moment.
season fun for us as Yankee
Yeah.
fans.
The whole
Um,
season, you're right. Yeah.
he did. He really did because we love Judge. Judge always had to do everything by himself. Now Judge did fall apart in the playoffs, but Soto was a constant, and having that extra person to lean on was a good thing. We had a great lineup, top 4 or 5. After that, the lineup stunk. But the biggest thing with the Yankees is you had two, I mean, amazing players hitting back to back in the lineup. That doesn't happen that much in
Yeah.
sports, and that was cool. I mean, for pitchers, having to go to Judge and Soto back to back has got to be crazy, um, and especially when those two were hot. Holy moly, it was great. So great for baseball. Um, it made the season a lot of fun. Yeah, I wish they had won. I really do, but it made baseball a lot of fun this year watching the Yankees do so well.
It was a long time coming to get back to the World Series. Like there have been some really good Yankee teams, but it took Soto and that swing to get them back. Like that's how good that guy is, right? All those years between World Series. And like Alex said, that allowed Juan Soto to get a blank check wherever
Yeah.
he wanted, whatever he wanted. Hey, I want my family this week. You got it. Whatever you want. All the money. Like that swing had that big of an impact on two franchises, right? The Yankees getting them back to the series, and the Mets potentially setting themselves up to get back to their glory days as well. Massive.
Yeah. And the guy's just got ice in his veins. Like a lot of
Yes.
players show the front and then they don't come through, and oh well. I mean, he just like really amazing. And he can go and strike out, and he'll walk back to the dugout, and he shakes it off and comes back. And the next inning, he's going to get a big hit. So
Yeah.
kudos to the Mets for getting
Special,
them.
special player. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So my next one, I was torn between two things that I didn't like. So they were, but they're hot. There were big things that happened in sports. Neither of them I liked. So I'm gonna pick one because we do talk about it a lot. But the whole LeBron and Bronny situation, that one, I just, I just feel it was not smart. But it did take the headlines, and it really was, it was crazy, and it got to be a little out of hand, and it got to be stupid in a lot of ways. It was almost a circus. And again, I will say I do not dislike Bronny James. He's a good kid. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders, but I just think the pressure of having LeBron as your father, and then LeBron making him do all this stuff, like LeBron pressured him. I'm sorry, he pressured the Lakers. He used his prominence with the Lakers to get him on the team. Um, I just feel I wonder what Bronny feels, how Bronny feels about all this, and if coming back, 10 years from now, we talk to him and he says, I really didn't like that my father did that. I wish he had just let me be and finish college. But LeBron wanted to see Bronny play with him one time, before he retires, and I think was realizing that he's starting to get a little old, and he wasn't sure how much longer he's going to have, so he wanted Bronny to get there. But it was just I could just imagine how the players in the Lakers feel. I don't know, do they like him that much so they feel it's okay? I just don't. I think secretly, if you talk to them, again, we might not ever know this, guys. We might not ever know because they might not ever say anything. But I bet you a lot of them are saying this is a circus, and I don't want to be around this. But I don't know how you guys feel, but to me, it was a big event. It had the headlines for a long time, um, but I'm also feeling that it shouldn't have been a big event.
I think it hurts LeBron James's legacy. I really do, because I think, Brian, you're right. It's going to come out that, the kid should have stayed in college. He should have refined his game and proven that he can play, versus leave college and those great years, right? They're formidable years that you learn, and under great coaches and learning fundamentals. There's no way that he made that decision like, oh yeah, this is really what I want to do, because he knew he wasn't good enough,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I really think it hurts LeBron, because it's, I think, poor decision making. And you may point to the money and all that other thing. Yeah, great. Like, he wouldn't have gotten the money. Okay, I get it. But um, character building, it just wasn't a good thing, I don't think. But obviously they came together. They're smart people and made a decision that they think was the best for them.
Yeah, Bronny could have transferred anywhere in the country after Andy Enfield left USC. He could have found the right situation for him from a playing perspective, from a coaching perspective, and made a lot of money via the NIL rules. But hey, look, they chose this to try to make history, and they did make history in the NBA. Bronny's in the G League. He's had a couple of good games, but I think the road is going to be much harder for him going this route than if he had stayed in college and kind of had all of those experiences. Like Alex said, like, these are great years for a young kid. Instead, he's on the road, and I don't even know where the team is based out of, the G League team for the Lakers. But I wish nothing but the best for Bronny, because we've said this before. He seems like a really nice kid for everything he's grown up in. I mean, to seem like a level-headed kid, and he stays out of trouble, and parents obviously care about him. I mean, hopefully it works out for him. But yeah, I just thought this was such a transparent effort to make history, and it kind of discounted what Bronny needed to do and who he needed to become. So just wish Bronny the best, and we'll see how it works out. But yeah, I agree. It kind of tarnishes LeBron's legacy. The agent telling all the other teams, don't draft him, he's going to the Lakers. It's like that's not like, Eli Manning forcing his way away from San Diego. I mean, he was consensus number one pick. This was the number 55 pick, and nobody's ever talked about
He
him.
gets trashed. He gets trashed on social media too.
Yeah, which
I
is
mean, this is
terrible
not
for him.
like
Yeah.
Caitlin Clark. On the other hand, social media is good and bad with her, but she does also gets a lot of praise on social media. She also gets a lot of
Yeah.
slack. But Bronny just gets slack. He's not getting a lot. There's not a lot of people saying, "Yeah, Bronny, man, he's doing good. I can't wait to see him play." No one's really doing that. It's pretty. They're all making fun of him, and that's a
Mhm.
tough thing. As a young kid like that, having to deal with that in this day and age, I feel
Yeah.
bad for him.
Yeah, it's tough.
Okay, Mike, you're next.
All right. I my last one is not a basketball item, so you guys will be happy to hear that. So this is a sport that I'm really the only one that talks about it on our show. So it's tennis. So we've talked in the past about what's going on in tennis, men's tennis in particular, and the game has been dominated for the last 20 years by the big three of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and I've been kind of waiting for the next generation. But I'm here to tell you, and it finally happened in 2024. The next generation of tennis is finally here, and so it's now being led by a guy I talked about as a potential icon of sports, Carlos Alcaraz. So he was able to win two Grand Slams in 2024. And then there's been the emergence of a guy from Bryan's home country of Italy, Yannick Sinner, who
Yeah.
does not have an Italian name or look Italian with his red hair, but he's become the dominant player now in tennis. Dispatched Djokovic in the Australian Open right at the beginning of the year to kind of like set himself up as a guy to be the next generation here. Won that Australian Open after beating Djokovic in the semifinals. And then at the U.S. Open, at the end of the season, he beat Taylor Fritz of the U.S. in straight sets. And then Sinner topped off the year by winning the year-end ATP finals as well, which is where the top 8 players by ranking play in the tournament for the end of the year. And he beat Taylor Fritz there again. So my story here, my top story for 2024 was the next generation of men's tennis players finally arriving. You've got Sinner, you've got Alcaraz, you've got Daniil Medvedev from the country formerly known as Russia, because they don't even use the Russian banner or acknowledge where these Russian athletes are from in tennis for some reason. And then you've actually got a rising generation of young American men as well. Francis Tiafoe had a great run at the U.S. Open. And then Ben Shelton as well. Really exciting young American player. So the next generation of men's tennis players finally arriving on the scene is my third top story of 2024.
It'll be interesting how the Americans do in that grouping. I've watched a couple of the Grand Slams, and they've done well, but still dominated by foreign players. And they're not showing the Russian stuff because they invaded Ukraine. I mean, that's the bottom line. And whether you agree with it or not, I mean, I don't really get it. I mean, it's like it's a flag, but I guess I understand, there's enough Ukrainian players on tour that there was enough backlash. So, but I'm with you, Mike. I think it's going to be exciting. I love when, the torch is passed to the next group and you have a whole, new bunch of guys. And in tennis, it goes, you reign for a long time now, with all the training that they do and, Federer and Nadal and they dominated forever. So
20 years,
yeah. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how those new guys do.
Yeah. Also curious how those American players are going to fare in here, because I agree with you, Alex, that they're good, not quite great. They're still a step behind those top foreign players like Sinner and Alcaraz and even Medvedev. Shelton in particular, I think, seems to be the guy who's rising. He's the youngest of the group. He's rising. I'm curious to see if he can develop the all around all court game to beat those guys. Tiafoe made a nice run at the Open. And Fritz, I think, has taken the biggest leap this year in terms of like getting himself to a U.S. Open final and getting to the ATP final as well.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Okay, very good one. Alex.
So my last one is I was there. So and it was a great game, but there was a singular moment, right? So my three kind of Cody, it was a whole Cody Rhodes build up, months long build up to the story. And then Soto, it was kind of like, this multi pitch at bat. And my last one is nearly a singular moment. And it was on April 22nd, the Knicks against the 76ers in game 2. And I happened to be there. And it was a double bang moment when Dante DiVincenzo hit a 3-pointer to win the playoff game. And it was like, they talk about MSG and, oh, it's the greatest, but it was the place to be that night. And it was a great game. So the background is the Knicks are playing the 76ers. The Knicks had won game 1. This is game 2, and it's a back and forth game. And the Knicks go down by, I think it was like 7. There wasn't a whole lot of time left. And I think they cut it to 5. And then Brunson hits a 3 to cut it to 2. They inbound the ball. Maxey, who had a great game for the 76ers, is going up the court, almost loses the ball, then trips and goes down. Knicks get the ball, they go down, and DiVincenzo shoots and misses. And it was like all the air went out. the ball's rebounded by Hartenstein. God bless him. That's all he did that series was rebound,
Yeah.
and passes it out to OG. OG gets it back to Dante, and he hits a three. And I am telling you, the roof blew off Madison Square Garden that night. Everybody went crazy, and it was literally the shot, right? Like, and unfortunately, Dante's not with the team this year, but he really earned his Knicks jersey that night for sure. And really, that whole series and that year, the Knicks had so many injuries and so many guys went down that unfortunately, their playoff they didn't get to battle the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, but just that night and being there for me, I was there with one of my sons. It was just an unbelievable moment, and to see what everybody says. And I've been to the Garden plenty of times for plenty of events, but that moment, it was New York from the moment that we walked in the place, just with the people that were there and all the different cultures that are there, and everybody just is there for one reason, and it's basketball, and it's Knicks basketball. And there was a couple 76ers fans around us, and all good, all game, friendly jibing back and forth, and for them to win the game in the fashion that they did, and then for it to be, if you know what I mean, a double bang.
Yeah.
It was, just a super great game, and really a moment, right? Like a singular shot that affects a sold out crowd in the Garden, to the point that grown men are hugging each other and jumping up and down, and they don't even know each other. And I was one of them. It was a really great story.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a go New York, go New York, go
Yeah,
moment.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
that's exactly what that is, and that that
yeah.
was that was a great night. I was jumping out of the couch watching that. It was great. It was just great, and yeah, I have a feeling DiVincenzo's going to be back. You watch. I have this feeling for some
Yeah,
reason.
I had that same feeling this week too. After hearing some stuff going on in Minnesota, I was like,
You might
but
see him
he
come
wants
back.
to. He wants to start.
Yes, but I
He
think
wants
he
to
also
start.
wants to win, and I
Yeah,
think right now, I think the Knicks again. The Knicks are a lot of fun to watch. They are, and I'm really looking forward to see how the playoffs are going to come. But they're starting to come along as a team.
yeah.
Again, it's going to take some time. They're still figuring each other out. They're coming together as a team, so it's going to
I
be good.
think the
That was a great choice. That was a great game. That was an amazing situation, and it was very cool.
I think the
So
Wolves are regretting that trade right now.
Yeah.
yeah, I heard Randall is
Randall's on the
not
move.
well liked. Yeah,
He's on the move.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
but we knew that, right? We knew he was kind of a cancer. I'm not. Okay, so my last one is again not a not one I like, but it was way too dominant to a point where you will remember where you were when this was going on, right? You're going to remember when it happened. So the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight,
Ah, yes.
which took the headlines for a very long time. There was, it was delayed. It was, people kept on wondering what the heck, why are they doing this? What's the whole point behind it? It became a bummer. I thought it was a total letdown. But all of us will remember, from years from now where we were on the day of that fight because everybody stopped to watch it. There were people that don't even like sports were watching it, and it was just crazy. And I don't know. I still think we got ripped off as sports fans with that whole situation, and I think that's kind of how boxing has been for the last 20 years or so. It's just not. It's not the same as it used to be back in the Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier days.
Was
It's
that
not.
even boxing?
I don't think it was.
Like, to me, it was just an event, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was, I don't know. It wasn't even
But
a boxing
but you guys
match.
know where you were that night, right? You
Yeah.
right.
Absolutely.
There were so many. I was at a restaurant and in California watching it with a bunch of people, and the whole restaurant was watching it. It was
Yeah.
crazy, and you realize and we were all like, "This is crap." What is this? This is they're not even fighting. They're not even boxing. What is? I don't understand what's
It was
going on.
like
What is
Dancing with
Tyson
the
doing?
Stars. There
Yeah,
was no
Jake
hitting.
Paul was Jake Paul was had his gloves so low that Tyson should have been able to knock him flat, but he never did. So I just don't understand what was going on with that. I'm glad I didn't bet on it. I'm glad I didn't spend any money on it. I'm glad it wasn't, but it was a dominant part of sports for this year. It was a prominent event, There are a lot of other things that were big, and we didn't even dive in. We talked about one part of the Olympics. I thought the Olympics themselves were amazing this year. There were so many things about it that were cool. The Liberty winning, yeah, I think because they did everything in their power to give the game away, and they still won the championship. So I don't consider that one big. That's why I thought about this Jake Paul Mike Tyson one, because it's you do remember where you were in that day at that time. So to me, that's a big event. And
And
again,
Tyson's the man, right? Like for
yeah,
our
yeah.
generation,
I didn't
just
I didn't like to have to bring this up as one, but I kind of had to. So
yeah. Yeah, and you're right, Brian. Like, I mean, I think it was like the biggest Netflix thing ever, right? Like, Netflix was crashing, and people were, people I think are suing Netflix now and all that. But Jake Paul knows how to promote an event, and Mike Tyson, and he knew, it would bring the money in, and that's all that was about. It was about you're going to get paid if you do these things, and I'm going to get paid, and we're going to walk away. It's kind of like the Conor McGregor when he fought
yes,
Mayweather.
Yeah, like, hey, you're going to get paid and I'm going to get paid, and who cares, about the actual sport of it. We're just going to get paid, and I don't blame them. I mean, they're it's a money grab, and I think Tyson needed the money, is what everybody was saying, but didn't like some Saudi or somebody offered him 700 million to Tyson to actually fight him legitimately. I don't know whatever came of that, but I don't think anybody ever agreed to it. But it's a good one, Bri, and unfortunately, it got a lot of attention.
What has boxing become if the biggest fight of the year was not the Tyson Fury Usyk fight, which happened like a week or two ago, but the biggest boxing event of the year was 58-year-old Mike Tyson fighting a 27-year-old YouTuber. Like, that's the state of boxing, unfortunately. It's a shame.
Yeah. All steroided out, and I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke.
It is.
But once they took it off TV, when you could watch it on a Saturday, and I think that was the big downfall of boxing, right? Like, because you would learn guys and you'd hear their names on a weekly basis, and now it's like everything's pay-per-view, and I don't know.
It became exclusionary boxing.
Yeah.
Where, like you said, you had to have pay-per-view and spend $40 to see it, where in the 70s, you'd see all these heavyweight fights on Wide World of Sports. Muhammad Ali fought on Wide World of Sports.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hagler, Hearns. I mean, all those, they were, great fights, but
Not this. This was a letdown, but it was a dramatic sporting event that was hit the headlines, and it was very prominent in a lot of people's lives for this year. So
Joey Chestnut beating Kobayashi in the hot dog eating contest.
No, yeah, that was there. I mean, that was high, but it was, no, it wasn't. It wasn't as big as this. It wasn't as big as this. Okay, I think that was great. I think we did a terrific job there looking at. I mean, there could have been a lot of other things that we could have added. A lot of other things. It was a big year in sports. I just want to say there nothing crazy besides the Celtics winning, which to me was like it was. I'm glad that Mike put it number one, because it was a very prominent thing. It was good for the sport. It is one of his teams. Alex and I had a chance. All three of us, we would have been very happy if the Yankees had won, or the Knicks had won, or any of these teams. But at least Mike, you got that. You got your team to win, and you have that, and just you always remember this year. So they could win again this year too. You never know.
Yeah, I think they will.
Yeah, I have a feeling they will too.
They're too good.
That's the Alex jinx. He's just saying that to try to jinx it.
Okay, well, have a very this episode should be dropping on New Year's Day, so everybody, we wish you from Three the Hard Way Sports Podcast. We wish you a prosperous and very happy New Year, and hopefully it's better than 2024.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Three the Hard Way Sports Podcast. Remember to get a Fudgy the Whale or Cookie Puss for the next time you're sitting down to watch the big game.